The fallout of WrestleMania 41 has been devastating for WWE. While ticket sales and record revenues were touted by Paul Levesque in the post-WrestleMania press conference, the reality is, behind the scenes, WrestleMania 41 and the build-up to the greatest show in WWE was a train wreck. And while we can blame the lack of build to major storylines like Cody Rhodes and John Cena, the reality is it goes beyond that. WWE has a problem, and its name is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Yes, indeed, the final boss is proving to be one of the biggest obstacles between WWE and awesome storytelling. It's crazy how much difference a year makes. In this video, we're going to take a look at the build-up to WrestleMania 41, hell, the build-up to the Royal Rumble, the build-up to all of it, why The Rock's presence in WWE over the past year has done more harm than good, and answer the big question, can Triple H and The Rock coexist in WWE, or will they have to make a final decision about the final boss? All that much more is coming up right here in this video, so be sure to smash that thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Alright, let's dive right in. So as I noted earlier, WrestleMania 41 has been largely panned by critics, fans, and basically everyone else. The storyline between John Cena and Cody Rhodes was thought to originally be as good as it gets. If you go back to Elimination Chamber, it's one of the most epic moments in professional wrestling history. Finally, after nearly 20 years, John Cena finally turned heel and turned his back on the WWE Universe. And people were excited. I was even ready to go to WrestleMania. However, then we got the build that we did, and it's not like there was anything illogical. It's not like there was anything that was necessarily wrong with the build. It was just kind of lackluster. It didn't feel like we were building up to this ultimate matchup between the hottest babyface in WWE and the biggest heel in wrestling history, a heel John Cena. It instead felt like we're building up to a match, which again is what they were supposed to do, but it didn't feel big. It didn't feel like Roman versus Cody in the past couple of years. It didn't feel like even Brock versus Roman a couple of years ago. Hell, it didn't even feel like Roman versus Bryan versus Edge a couple of years ago either. And I think that we can point all of these problems back to one man's involvement, and that is The Rock. We now know that The Rock had a little bit more to do with the build-up to WrestleMania 41 than people originally speculate. If we go back to the beginning of all of this, The Rock was brought in when TKO was formed as a pretty major shareholder and an executive on the board, which gave him a lot of power. He wasn't the main guy. That power still lies with Ari Emanuel, and Triple H is still the head of creative, so all of the creative still has to go through him. But we knew that The Rock would wield some sort of power over the product. We just didn't know how much, and we saw that firsthand back in the build-up to WrestleMania 40 when The Rock inserted himself into the main event despite Cody Rhodes being victorious at the Royal Rumble. And Cody, in one of the most bizarre segments in WWE history, gave his spot to The Rock in the main event of WrestleMania instead of going for the title that was robbed of him in the previous year. A segment that I think still has done a lot of irreparable harm to the Cody Rhodes character in WWE, and a segment that began this narrative about The Rock about being selfish. People point to that one instant of The Rock coming in out of nowhere, building up to a major match, which was Roman versus The Rock, but doing so despite the fan desire to see Cody Rhodes dethrone Roman Reigns, and also despite the fact that it made no sense in the story they were telling. But then they pivoted, and The Rock kind of saw that the fans were not going to go along with this main event that he wanted to do. So instead, they went with this final boss character, arguably the best work that The Rock has ever done in WWE. And even though it was a couple of weeks, we got an awesome epic beatdown segment of Cody Rhodes on Raw that still to this day, to me, is one of the greatest segments in WWE history. And despite Night 1's main event being lackluster in the ring, it accomplished the job. We saw The Rock wrestle, and it led to some awesome moments where Cody would eventually overcome the odds in winning the WWE Championship. And despite the weird build-up to WrestleMania 40, we were all interested in seeing some really cool feuds. We knew that we're still going to get Roman versus The Rock at some point, but more people were clamoring for a feud between Cody and The Rock. After what they did in the lead up to Mania, that was the money match, and that's what people wanted to see. And we thought at one point we would at least get a glimpse and a continuation of that story, but all of that changed. The Rock was not on TV over the next couple of months. As we all know, he's a very busy guy. He's got a packed schedule. He's going to be filming movies and TV shows and whatnot. But around the time of Backlash, there was rumblings that The Rock would come back. But at the same time, we had outlets like Wrestling Observer and Fightful report that despite the fact that The Rock may be involved, it's unlikely that it was leading to anything bigger and that it was a one-off. And that is when we also started to hear these reports that The Rock was kind of just doing whatever he wanted, and he has a lot of free reign. He's not only a future WWE Hall of Famer, but he is also Dwayne Johnson, the head of the board of TKO. So again, with that, it wields a lot of power, and over the next couple of months, we would find out exactly what that power was. As we get into 2025, The Rock's next appearance was on the debut edition of Raw on Netflix, where he cut one of the most baffling promos in WWE history to open the show. The Rock went out there and cut a very weird and rambling promo that disintegrated any sense of the final boss character that existed. Many people blamed this on the Netflix premiere being an introduction to wrestling for many fans around the world who may have been tuning in for the first time, but it not only was weird in that The Rock was talking about wrestling and breaking the fourth wall, but he did so by undermining the biggest story that they were telling up until that point with him, that being the story between himself and Cody Rhodes. He gave Cody Rhodes his flowers. He was drinking tequila with Cody Rhodes backstage. He was talking about how he's the greatest champion. Not only did we get that weird segment, then we get The Rock's follow-up promo on NXT where he just kind of went out there allegedly drunk out of his mind and cut a very weird promo. So again, adding to the narrative that The Rock can basically do whatever the hell he wants with very little repercussion. We then get the reports in between Mania. There had been reporting, according to Ibu of Wrestle Purists and Fightful, that The Rock's involvement in WrestleMania was probably not going to be a major one, as he had Moana reshoots, and the likelihood is he would definitely not be wrestling, and he may not even be appearing on the show. Despite this, you had a lot of wrestling fans who had worked themselves into thinking that The Rock had this master plan, even though his Bad Blood appearance didn't really have a reason. He just showed up, interrupted Cody and Roman, put up three fingers because he's a weirdo, not because he was building up to something. But we then get the segment in the lead up to Elimination Chamber where The Rock says that he was brought in to do an angle by Ari Emanuel. On the Pat McAfee show, The Rock stated that he was asked by Ari Emanuel to help out with ticket sales. Ticket sales for the event at that point weren't really going as well as WWE would like. They were in the Rogers Center, which is a major baseball stadium, and up until that point, they had had some trouble filling the place out. So, according to The Rock, Ari Emanuel asked him, "Rock, can you help out? Can you come and help us sell some tickets with an angle?" And The Rock thought about it, and he eventually said yes. And according to The Rock himself, he wanted Cody Rhodes initially to turn heel. Now, this in a vacuum is not that big of an idea as far as it being horrible. However, when you kind of take a step back at the holistic picture and kind of the way things have played out, it does seem like there's a trend with The Rock. Last year, he undermined Cody and his story by basically inserting himself into the main event of WrestleMania, only to be rejected by the WWE Universe. And this time, there seemed to have been an attempt by The Rock to try to make the biggest babyface in WWE in this era a heel at his peak. I'm not saying that The Rock is trying to deliberately bury Cody Rhodes or destroy his push or anything like that, but it's a little suspect. And given what we know now about this, and given the fact that Dave, Sean, Ibu were all right, it's got to give you some pause in my view. So then we get this rejection by Cody Rhodes and Triple H, according to The Rock, even though The Rock states that eventually, Cody's going to turn heel with breaking the fourth wall in that Pat McAfee interview. It was insane. I could not believe what this man was saying, basically giving away the creative plans to the future. And again, I know people are going to be like, wrestling's a work. You're working yourself up. Why are you doing that? Well, The Rock's got to pick a lane here. He's either got to be the final boss in this interview, or he's got to be Dwayne Johnson. And the worst thing you can do is destroy major moments before they happen. One of the reasons why the John Cena turn at Elimination Chamber was so great is because despite people knowing that it was a likely possibility, people didn't know for a fact it was going to happen. You can't just give away stuff like that. There is a sense of anticipation that wrestling fans want. And speaking of Elimination Chamber, people got a major moment that they wanted. The John Cena heel turn in that segment where apparently, according to The Rock, John Cena was the guy who wanted to turn heel. And now there's even more reporting coming out that John Cena made that last minute decision to turn heel at Elimination Chamber. And knowing that it was a last minute decision, knowing that there wasn't a long-term plan, there was nothing from Bad Blood to Elimination Chamber that was leading somewhere. It was just all done on the fly. When The Rock did this, it wasn't signaling that there was a plan, that he was 20 steps ahead. He was just piecing out, guys, because that's exactly what he did. Over the next couple of weeks, we did not get The Rock on TV. We have not seen The Rock on WWE TV ever since. The only time that he even showed up was at that Pat McAfee interview in the fallout of WrestleMania, after Travis Scott came out and stole the spotlight from the entire match. And it was a very weird ending that left people not only wanting more, but very confused. Why would The Rock inject this poison into WWE, the heel John Cena, and then just go away without being there to fulfill his plan? It seemed a little weird, and it was, and it caused people to really backlash against WrestleMania. And then this Pat McAfee interview, which I've been referencing throughout, came out, and not only did we get the notes about there not really being a plan and The Rock kind of trying to turn Cody heel, you also got some insight into how The Rock felt about the main event. The Rock stated that he wouldn't necessarily have done the WrestleMania 41 main event in the way that it went. He even indirectly called out Triple H's creative, which kind of adds fuel to the fire of this idea that there's some push and pull between Triple H and The Rock. And if you're in Triple H's position, you got to think about it like this. You had The Rock come in last year and basically throw an entire wrench into all of your plans for WrestleMania, which were likely building up a major story between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. Then, despite it being saved, you have The Rock kind of just showing up at the end of Bad Blood for a cool moment that didn't really lead to anything, wasn't really part of a storyline, was just The Rock reminding people that, hey, I'm The Rock and I do wrestling sometimes. And then you have to deal with The Rock coming into the buildup of WrestleMania after he was told by your boss, allegedly Ari Emanuel, to come in and not only basically do whatever he wanted, to do the storylines that he wanted, dictate your creative, but on top of that, he wasn't even there to finish the job. So as a booker, Triple H, yes, could have booked this significantly better, and there's a time and a place to talk about the ways he could have mitigated this, knowing that The Rock was not going to be there. However, Triple H was also put in a very difficult position as a booker, and it was due to The Rock. And now Triple H has to deal with this likely for a while. The Rock and his position in TKO is pretty solidified. And at the end of the day, if The Rock comes in and says, the final boss is doing this, who is Triple H to say no? And that is going to be something to keep an eye on. I do think if you look at The Rock's comments on that Pat McAfee show interview, there were some subtle shots taken at The Rock. And if you look at some of the things that have come out over the past couple of months, you can make an argument that some of it may have been coming from Triple H's camp, as far as The Rock not being involved and him just kind of showing up to show up. There's a lot of tension there on the surface that you can kind of tell. And do I think that this is going to lead to The Rock being pushed out of TKO or Triple H being pushed out? Not necessarily. However, we know that wrestling is very unpredictable. We know that we have seen situations where the impossible has happened. And these are two of the most stubborn men, not only in the history of professional wrestling, probably the world, in Triple H and The Rock. And I think at the end of the day, if these two have a big creative disagreement next year at WrestleMania, for example, I do think something's got to give. Either Triple H has to put his foot down to Ari Emanuel himself and say, I am the creative director, let me do my job. Or the final boss is saying, it's either me or him. And what the final boss says goes. It's insane. So is The Rock. So is this whole situation. But guys, I want to hear from you in the comment section. What do you guys think about this whole situation? Is The Rock right? Is he wrong? Is he insane like I believe? Let me know. Also, be sure to smash that thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. I'm Omer Q for Real Take Wrestling. Be happy, be healthy, and as always, keep it real.